Bismillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa mawalah. Alhamdulillah, who has gathered us in a house from his houses and who has blessed us to be of those that support its establishment, of those that assure that all the rights are maintained for these masajid of Allah Azza wa Jal. Alhamdulillah, that we're from those that look for ways to grow and move forward and not to stay in our same place, getting used to the status quo. Because if you look at a stagnant pond, you see the algae builds up and then you got the river that's rushing, progression. So as Muslims, that's something that has to be in our priority list. Assuring that we're constantly progressing, because as we know that the Iman goes up and down. So it's upon us to choose. Do we want the upward direction? Or if we're not really learning, if we're okay with our situation for the past 5-10 years, you're going to see it. You're going to see your Iman going down. And we've seen some people that even left Islam because of this. Because they thought, that's it. I made it. I learned enough. I'm just going to go to maybe khutbahs on Friday, maybe. And then you don't see the importance of that anymore either. And then you just start going downhill. So may Allah protect us from that. And that's why, like we discussed today, the importance of supporting each other in progress. And alhamdulillah, not many people have a place that's within a close distance, a masjid. Some people have to do it in their houses or in small rooms. Some people have to drive an hour and a half to their closest masjid. But alhamdulillah, Allah blessed us with having these masajid even closer. I mean, in New York City, it's a blessing too. You got over 200, 300 masajid in New York City itself. So the houses of Allah were established, and there's many there. So right now we got to look for ways how to fully utilize this blessing and assure that this, what we have, is used optimally. Because sometimes even someone with such a beautiful masjid can find something to complain about. But as believers, we look at everything in a positive lens. We look at all the good things that we have over here and how can we utilize it. We look at the youth, mashallah, we got youth here, and that's a blessing. There's some masajid that are even older maybe, they don't really have youth. So one should look at the positive and keep moving forward and plan for khair. And like we said, that stagnancy is just going to stall progress, and it's actually going to bring, because we've seen places, there's masajid established just because of allowing the ego to enter, letting the shaitan take the conversation over. Masajid were closed down just because of that. It's not because there was no money to maintain it. It's not because there weren't qualified people to run it. But they weren't thankful for the blessing that Allah gave them. So that crumbled on top of them, and now they're just all scattered around. And if you look at the society of the Prophet ﷺ, how they wouldn't see someone for a few days to actually go and inquire. Something must have happened to him. There was genuine care. It wasn't for some worldly benefit. So, alhamdulillah, you have many stories of the sacrifices that they gave for Islam, defending Medina, especially the very difficult situation in the battle of, which battle was Medina surrounded in? Medina was surrounded by about 10,000 soldiers. What was that battle called? Yep, Khandaq, also known as the Battle of Al-Ahzab, the Confederates or the coalition. So, in this battle, they decided, the mushrikeen of Quraysh, they united with the Jewish tribes, they united with even some mercenaries. They said, they made the decision, we're going to bring an end to this Islam. They got all together, and the Muslims didn't say, oh, we have to give in now. No, they said, this is, Allah blessed us with this Islam, Allah blessed us with this Medina, where Islam is established, we're going to preserve that, whatever it takes. So when they became surrounded, when they were about to get surrounded, they started digging the trench around Medina. And there was a part of Medina that had mountains, so that's where some companions were positioned on top of these mountains. For those that have been to Medina, you've probably seen those actual places where different companions, where even the Prophet ﷺ used to pray while defending Medina from the enemies. And in that situation, it was very difficult. Food supplies was very short. You had the hypocrites within trying to disunite the Muslims, trying to discourage the Muslims. What did they do? They're like when the Prophet ﷺ was giving glad tidings of the conquering of Persia and Rome, and they started saying things like, he can't even protect his own city, and we're over here, we barely have food, our families aren't safe. And he's talking about these bigger dreams and illusions. So the hypocrites were doing their thing, but the believers continued. And the same thing happened in the Battle of Uhud. What happened? The Muslims, for those that went, you can see the Prophet's mosque, the courtyard. That was mainly the Prophet's city at that time. After, when they got the news that Quraysh was coming from Mecca, they wanted to attack, especially they wanted to avenge those that were killed in Badr. The Prophet ﷺ consulted the companions, and you could see what kind of leader he is. He's even consulting his companions. So he ﷺ said he was initially more inclined to the Muslims defending Medina from the outskirts of Medina, from the walls of Medina. But there were some companions, especially the ones that didn't participate in Badr, they wanted to meet the enemies at Uhud. So then the Prophet ﷺ decided that, we'll just go and meet the enemies at Uhud. And some of the companions felt bad that they thought that they maybe forced the Prophet ﷺ into that. So then the Prophet ﷺ said, it is not for a prophet of Allah if he puts on the coat of armor to take it off. The decision was made. So after that, the companions, how many people left Medina? About 1,000 for Uhud, for the Battle of Uhud. Then they stopped in an area which today is called Al-Mustarah. It's a whole neighborhood is named after it, Hayy al-Mustarah. Comes from the word istiraha, rest. So the army rested there, and then what happens there? Abdullah ibn Ubay ibn Salul, who is the leader of the hypocrites, he says, what's the point of doing all this? We got our families back and there's no point of losing our lives for nothing. So then what? He took 300 people and went back to Medina. 300 from an army of 1,000, that's a huge blow. And that's really difficult, especially when you're anticipating an army of about 3,000. But the believers, they were steadfast and they moved forward. They didn't let the hypocrites or anyone that tries to stop them from doing good to prevent them from progressing. And that's how we should look at things today too. You have a good project, you have a good initiative, keep pushing forward. You're going to have people that discourage you. You're going to have people that their ego won't let them accept that. There's all kinds of things. Shaitan will try all kinds of ways to discourage any progress in the Muslim community, especially if you try to do something together. Immediately, he tries to encourage people to backbite, to talk negatively about any initiative. Just looking for anything to discourage people from doing it. So that's why we have to be aware of these things and avoid them. Because we've seen way too many communities get scattered and disassemble because of following these whispers and falling into slandering, backbiting, all these things that the Prophet ﷺ didn't mention how vile these things are. Allah doesn't say, أَيُحِبُّ أَحَدُكُمْ أَن يَأْكُلَ لَحْمَ أَخِيهِ مَيْتًا فَكَرِهْتُمُوهُ. Do you like to eat the dead meat of your brother? Allah is making these examples to show how disgusting these things are. But sadly, we have normalized some of these disgusting things. Therefore, we see a lot of disunity. We're asking ourselves, why? The answer is, look at how our discussions and how our conversations are going. Is Allah being remembered in conversations? And we know how the Prophet ﷺ, what did he say about conversations or sittings, gatherings where Allah isn't mentioned? Those gatherings are not blessed. Sitting for hours and hours with your Muslim brother and you don't remember Allah Azza wa Jal. Even if you're talking business, you could still mention Allah Azza wa Jal. You could bless that business too. So that normalizing of remembering Allah Azza wa Jal together is something really important. Because right now, many people can't go and drink a coffee except if they start talking about people here and there. Therefore, weakening their own Iman and also losing good deeds from their own scale of good deeds. So ask Allah to make us of those that are consistent in positive conversations and in remembering Allah Azza wa Jal. Because we gotta keep ourselves accountable. We gotta look at ourselves. Are we actually indulging in something that Allah loves? We have to catch ourselves in a moment. You're about to say something that you shouldn't say, you hold yourself. And then you get a good deed for that. And that's the beauty of Islam. You have a intention for a bad deed, and you don't do it, you get a good deed for that. You have an intention for a good deed, and you don't do it, you get a good deed for that. Subhanallah. So all these blessings have to be utilized. And if you look at the companions, they would say, "Ta'al nu'min sa'a." They said, let's believe for an hour. Or here, an hour isn't like the 60-minute hour, it's like a portion of time. So they would sit together just to remember Allah Azza wa Jal. And those gatherings are blessed. You got the angels supplicating for those in those gatherings. And imagine if those gatherings were consistent, how blessed would your life be? How blessed would your life be if you're remembering Allah, Bismillah when you're eating, Bismillah when you're entering your house, Bismillah when you're opening the light, Bismillah when when you're opening a bottle. All these things, there's even narrations for these things. Bismillah, even in your before the relations with your wife. All these things, if we include it in our lives, you'll see your life a lot more blessed, inshallah. And if you look also at the Masjid at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, they weren't just a place for salah. Obviously, that's one of the main purposes for a masjid, but it was also a place for education. It was a place where for counseling. It was a place for disputes to be resolved. It was a place where people got stronger on it socially too. And some even got married because they knew each other from the same masjid. Even today, you have people that they trust the person. They say, even though you never met my daughter, but I trust you. I knew you for all these years. And then you also know him. You knew him for all these years, and you know how he would raise his family, and you know each other. And then you're willing to give your daughter to that person, or you're willing to marry because you're aware of that person, because you built that connection in the house of Allah. And it's not like building your connection in a bar, and that could go all kinds of directions. So the masjid, if it's utilized fully, you're going to see a society that's glowing bright with Iman. And that's going to protect ourselves and our families. And I was just telling the brothers that if you can have a beautiful place, you could be in Medina, but if you don't have the right surrounding around you, that could still misguide you. That's why even at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, you had hypocrites. So that's why wherever you are, even if you're in Mecca, if you have a bad surrounding, if you don't have a suhbah salihah, a pious brothers that you spend your time with, you're gonna get led to the wrong path, and you could be from those that Allah's anger is upon, and you are in the most blessed of cities. So that's why even being in Utica, Allah could bless you with stronger Iman. Allah could bless you with doing more good deeds than some people that aren't given the tawfiq to do those things in the most blessed of places. So some people, sometimes they get depressed, I wish I was in Mecca, Medina, I wish I was living there. But that's a nice wish. It's good to visit. The Prophet ﷺ would encourage us to go follow Umrah with Umrah. But we have to utilize where we are right now to the max. Because if you're not utilizing what you have, the blessing that you have over here, are you actually serious about how you're going to utilize your time in those places? Because we've seen people, they were benefiting a lot more when they were over here, more than when they went over there. They got distracted, they got with the wrong people, and you see them just going down and down, lower than they were, surrounded with all the craziness that we have over here. So that's something we have to be thankful for. We have to thank Allah day and night for all these blessings, so we don't lose them. Allah wants us to be from the shakirin. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ said, Ahabbul amakin, the most beloved places to Allah Azza wa Jal are where? The Masajid. And the most disliked places are what? The marketplace. Why is the marketplace so disliked?
A lot of cheating, business.
Sometimes cheating happens. Sometimes people get distracted. They don't really remember Allah that much. And that's why a place, the masjid, is so beloved to Allah Azza wa Jal, because very high chance that your Iman is going to increase, very high chance that you're going to remember Allah Azza wa Jal, very high chance that you're going to spread happiness to your brother that you see. And we know that one of the best deeds that we could do is enter happiness into the heart of your Muslim brother or sister. And if you look at the things that prevent us from attaching ourselves to the masjid, what are the things that prevent us? Being too attached to the dunya, becoming too lazy sometimes. Maybe you don't feel like putting your jacket on, and you don't feel like going through all that cold weather, or other places going through that heat. Like in Medina, you have to go through 120 degrees to go to the masjid. Sometimes you gotta sacrifice these things to enjoy on the long run. Achieving the pleasure of Allah isn't by disregarding His commands. Achieving the pleasure of Allah is by doing sami'na wa ata'na. We hear and we obey. There's no delay. We hear something, Prophet ﷺ told us, it's from the Sunnah, something that Allah commands us, sami'na wa ata'na. We don't give it a thought. We don't say, let me look for the scientific wisdoms behind this, and then I'll maybe apply this, the fasting that they have now, the intermittent fasting, and it's so good for your health and so many health benefits. But alhamdulillah, as Muslims, we know Allah said something. The Prophet ﷺ encouraged us to fast Mondays, Thursdays, the 13th, 14th, 15th of the Islamic calendar, Ramadan. We do it because we were encouraged by the Prophet ﷺ. We were told by Allah Azza wa Jal. We can benefit from these scientific rulings, of these scientific discoveries, but we shouldn't rely on them as our main source of motivation to do these things. So that's why we have the whole concept of La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, full submission, complete submission, sami'na wa ata'na. And we know that one of the 7 people who will be under the shade of Allah, of Allah's arsh, on the day when there is no shade other than His shade, one of them is what? رَجُلٌ قَلْبُهُ مُعَلَّقٌ بِالْمَسَاجِدِ. And the person whose heart is attached to the masajid. So this applies to wherever we are. You could be from those that are blessed with this big blessing, and you are over here in the middle of New York. That's why utilizing these blessings where we are is really important. And we shouldn't let being far away from Masjid al-Haram or Masjid al-Nabawi to discourage us from enjoying this goodness and attaching our hearts to that which Allah wants us to attach our hearts to, and detaching our hearts from that which Allah wants us to detach from. Because everything in this world will perish. وَيَبْقَى وَجْهُ رَبِّكَ ذُو الْجَلَالِ وَالْإِكْرَامِ. And the only one that's going to remain is Allah Azza wa Jal, when everything perishes. And He is the one that will give life back to everyone after they die. And if you look at some of the ways that we could actually practically get involved in the community, and we should encourage others. Because if our youth aren't connecting over here, they're going to connect with other youth in other places. If we aren't connecting with them ourselves, you're going to see a disconnect, and then it leads to the problem that we mentioned, that you only see older people in the masjid. Although, if you look at the society of the Prophet ﷺ, there was full integration. So integrated between the two generations, to the extent that who did the Prophet ﷺ send command for him to lead the army before he passed away? You got it. Osama ibn Zayd radiallahu anhu. And how old was he approximately at this time?
15.
Yeah, between like 17, 18, something like this. Someone would say, I wouldn't give a 17-year-old my car to drive. But that's why they were raised differently. They had a different mindset. They understood that the akhirah is the goal and not this temporary illusion. You could get the best car over here, you could get the best house, you could get the best job, the best salary, but all that's just gonna sooner or later vanish. So if we don't utilize the blessings that we have now and work together for the sake of Allah, we are just going to hold ourselves back, and we aren't going to build any khair for ourselves, and we won't establish the deen of Allah in His land as He actually wants us to establish it. So ask Allah to make us of those that remember Him a lot, of those that collaborate and work together in enjoining good and forbidding evil, and of those that do ta'awun al birri wa taqwa, as Allah tells us, وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى وَلَا تَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ, and collaborate and work together in piety and in being mindful of Allah Azza wa Jal, and do not work together in spreading mischief and spreading evil in the land. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد. Any questions, insights?
When you mentioned about the backbiting and speaking upon the person behind the company, is there any municipality when he didn't, when the person they is able to backbite? Because I was told, like, for example, that if someone is putting on community, like the ball of money, like for example, $100, but he goes to different brothers, and we are being preyed on, we become victims as a community. Is that permissible when we could talk about what's going on?
Yeah, so something like that, you would go to, there's certain, in order to prevent certain evils, it should be brought up, something like that should be brought up to the brothers managing the masjid. So then they could take the right measures, maybe announce it, maybe speak to that person and approach him in the right way so he doesn't harass community members. And there are certain situations where it's allowed. Like, for example, when somebody comes to ask for marriage, then you're allowed to say, this is very different. So if somebody comes and asks, this brother, somebody says, you have a daughter, for example, this brother says, he comes and asks, are these things true? I heard these things about, or he says, somebody asks you, what do you think, should I actually give my daughter to so-and-so? Then you can actually open up. You say, I don't really see him in the masjid too often. I see him sometimes. He smokes a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and then so you can make a more informed decision, because this is right now you're dealing with an amana, responsibility. So in that situation, that's one of the situations where it's allowed. And something that people sadly got really used to is, making fun of each other in different ways. And, something very interesting is that you're not allowed to even make fun of the physical attributes of a non-Muslim, because those are physical attributes, because that's the creation of Allah Azza wa Jal. Some say so-and-so looks like a potato head, for example, or something like that. So those things, if you want to talk about someone's evil, the evil that they're spreading, that's a different story. But talking about their physical attributes, that's something that people fall into very often. I hope that answered the question. Flatbush. MashaAllah. A lot of flashbacks over here. The Zamzam.
We are reconnection.
How to bring us together. I have a question that I usually ask most of all the speakers, because our Masjid, they have time so long. And I wanted to know that one, I understood that there's multiple blessings in congregation. But if the congregation purposely push it back for whatever reason, can you expound on that? Again, do I have to make the question a little more clear?
So you're saying if somebody, for example, you want to pray Isha at 7 o'clock, but the congregation prays at 8. So you're trying to say, do you get the same reward?
Oh, no, like you gave me that example, but we got each of, we know each of them we delay up into retirement to for that. Like, for example, the Salat also, they say that it's being put back an hour later, and it comes in at 2 something. I say it come at 3:02, and this Masjid makes it an hour and 15 minutes later, and they say because they subscribe to the energy then had. But the person who want to make it closest to his time, even though within that window.
So basically, well, usually you shouldn't make a congregation before the official congregation of the masjid. Well, if you can't make it for that main congregation for whatever reason, work or whatever, then you're excused even as long as you had that intention, that genuine intention there. But sometimes even the jama'ah, the congregation prayer is delayed, as it was known at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, that sometimes the Prophet ﷺ would be busy with some delegations that would come, meetings. So then the time of the iqamah would sometimes get delayed. And that's why you got the narrations of the companions that were falling asleep while they were sitting, that they fell asleep while sitting, waiting for salah. And from this hadith, you also derive the rulings of whether you lose wudu when you're sitting, when you doze off a little bit or not. So this one they use as a proof, the scholars use as a proof that you still maintain wudu. Some say as long as you're not reclining on anything. So over here, even though the Prophet ﷺ, delayed the time, the Sahaba still waited for that main congregation.
you're afraid that it's not, it's not custom made for me, but the Rasulullah has certain things as the prophet too. But what is else that they need? Like person who
Well, well, the congregation, I mean, the one that leads the congregation, or the brothers that manage the masjid, usually they put certain timings for certain wisdom. Sometimes, for example, what we do in Brooklyn is we put it at 8 o'clock because most people will be back from work, finish their dinner, and they could make it easily for Isha. Although Isha comes in like an hour, hour and a half before that, but we do that for that wisdom. So if you got that intention, inshallah, you try to make it.
You can't make a mess, bro.
Alhamdulillah.
Yes, again, I understand on this point. We want specifically the answers to be on time. But we, as a community, to be honest, sometimes we play double standard. And this is from the committee. This comes from the committee. Why? Because we dedicated that time for Asr, and once someone wants to pray earlier, and they say because of this. But then when it comes Friday, because people are here, they break that time, they pray early before the scheduled time.
Yes.
So is what pleases others and not others?
Are you talking about Asr after?
Basically, you're saying that it should be consistent.
Consistent, exactly. It should be consistent. Don't reject for one and pleasing others at a certain point. You have the time schedule. Every community member should stick to that.
Yeah, so if something like that, obviously it should be discussed with within the committee, so it could actually be discussed, resolved.
Yeah, actually, brothers, this has been an issue that's been.
No, and it's important, like we were saying, issues have to be discussed from the beginning. Anything that can cause a little something over here, you gotta try to stop it before, because then this brother is gonna say, I can't believe so and so, he doesn't care about any of us, and then so and so, and then the next person's gonna say the same thing, and then you'll see a collapse in the community for something so small, and something that could be so easily fixed.
Like, for example, that most nights gonna have a Ramadan schedule, and then after Ramadan, they say they get back to that whole schedule. But why, for Ramadan, it will take you throughout the whole year. If you're gonna get close, and I noticed that during Ramadan, it's close to the time they come in. So not I know there's what a grace period from the Akama, from the Adhan to the Akama. But when you got a great period that consists of an hour and 15, 20 minutes, and what you see the community makes it after Juma, Sunday time after Juma, also coming early. But some of the people say they survive to this man that you're supposed to make it later.
Well, as long as there's a wisdom behind it, and for Ramadan, because it can be in different times if there's a wisdom behind it, but obviously it should be discussed, and then if the case is closed, then the case is closed after post-discussion. Wallahu a'lam. There's sometimes wisdoms. It doesn't have to be a certain certain things could be changed. What are you gonna say? What's his question?
He doesn't want to hear it. Make him cry.
Something that I think somebody asked me today is like people that want to study in Medina or study abroad. What's the best way to do it? Some people get stuck and like they don't really study anywhere because they're just looking forward to studying abroad somewhere. But for some reason or another, they aren't given the opportunity to actually go out. And that's what I was saying is that you could still seek knowledge even in America. It's maybe not going to be as easy, but it's still possible. We've seen people that have done it. You know, someone in New York City, they'd go from Brooklyn to Queens, an hour and a half with the train 3 times a week. Mexican revert brother, and mashallah, he built that discipline, and he ended up going to Medina, and then he ended up studying in Egypt and Morocco. But the point here is that he was on a more advanced level when he arrived in Medina, more than some people that even graduated from Medina, mashallah. So it is possible even to start wherever we are, and obviously whichever community could facilitate that, or sometimes even collaborating with another community, having a joint community program, 2 or 3 masajid working together, so then to make things easier logistically, and also you don't have to create the wheel again. So that's something that's a solution for that problem. And some people also think that in order to study in Medina, you have to get accepted to the Islamic University of Medina, but that's not necessarily true. Right now, there's a lot of institutes that are like Arabic institutes. You do pay a small monthly fee for it, but right now with the tourist visas, you could stay like 2-3 months and do like an intensive Arabic program. You don't live in those 5-star hotels. You live in some of the dorms, or just some regular rooms, shared apartments, and you get a glimpse, or you get a taste of how seeking knowledge is there, and you also practice your Arabic, because when you're forced into a place like that, an Arabic surrounding, you start speaking Arabic a lot faster. Alhamdulillah, I went to an Islamic school in New York, but the problem was I was too scared to speak that which I learned. And that's one of the biggest mistakes when learning a language, is to be afraid of making mistakes. An example I like to make is sometimes, you're gonna say, أنا أريد خبز. You're gonna say, I want bread, but you actually meant water. Somebody's gonna laugh at you and say, oh, that's not khubz, that's ma. You just laugh it off. You don't take it offensive. Don't let it touch your ego. And there you go. You learned ma and you learned khubz, bread. So it's important. And once I was put into that surrounding, within the first few months, I was able to have some conversations. And before I was able to understand a little bit, but then when I was thrown into that environment, and that's something that's good about these programs, that you can go for even a month in the summer, or 2 months, the father and the sons, and it's a good thing to do. You'll see it's going to have an effect, because sometimes you don't even go for 1 month thinking that you got to go for 4 or 5 years, and it's better to do that short period of time, right, and progress, instead of just saying, I wish I would actually get, full scholarship, etc., etc. But like we said, we utilize the blessings that we have, and we don't stop ourselves from doing any good.
What's the fee, bro? Yeah, what is like the...
It's not crazy. It's not like university prices over here. It's like maybe I think they did have a program for like $2,000 for a whole month, including a place to stay and housing and food and transportation to Masjid Nabawi daily. I mean, you'll live like maybe 25 minutes away from Masjid Nabawi, but okay, so some I don't want you to lose a community member too soon.
So I think just take maternity leave. If you get the 3 month maternity leave,
What was your favorite thing about the baby?
Yeah.
Well, the most beautiful thing in Medina during those few years was just being surrounded with such a diverse Muslim community in Masjid Nabawi. You see Muslims from all walks of life, Muslims that went through all kinds of things in order to come to Mecca and Medina. People like you'll see people that never seen an escalator in their life. Like there's escalators next to Masjid Nabawi. They're scared to go on it, but Allah still blessed them to visit Masjid Nabawi. And then you have some people that are given so much, but they weren't still blessed to go there. So just seeing that the diversity of the Muslims there and the different stories of what people went through to come. Some people took a one-way ticket because people are in their homelands are being oppressed. Like there's some Uyghur Chinese Muslims, they haven't been back in 30 years. If they go back, I mean, they can't go back. So just seeing all these people and you have a lot of people that could remind you of Allah Azza wa Jalla. People that you have people that are millionaires, but they make it to Masjid Nabawi almost for 5 daily prayers. And it's not easy for those that live in Medina. They know that getting all 5 prayers, getting 2 prayers in Masjid Nabawi, getting 3 prayers, that's an achievement. Getting 5 prayers, some people are blessed to do that. So those people, they were really hurt. Everyone was hurt during Corona when they couldn't pray in Masjid Nabawi, but those people that, constantly there, as if you like ripped something away from them, subhanAllah. So you see a lot of inspiration there from the Muslim community in Medina. And then also in Islamic University of Medina, you could actually see over 160 nationalities, almost 200 studied there. And they actually got the Guinness World Record for most diverse university in the world. And alhamdulillah, it's for one purpose, to study the deen of Allah. And these different, like, you have students that became Muslim and people that from France that became Muslim just moved to Medina, even they're not accepted at university, but they got a job, or maybe they left their own job and they just figuring things out, but they decided, they want to be in that surrounding. And then the different stories of how people, like, something very interesting is there's a brother from Bhutan. You guys heard about that country? So that place at that time when he became Muslim, they only had about like 2 native Muslim families in the whole country. And where they were praying Jumu'ah Salah? They were praying Jumu'ah Salah in the Bengali embassy. So alhamdulillah, he did the Arabic Institute, then he went back because he has a responsibility. But those different stories are very inspirational, and that's why generally listening to the stories of how different people became Muslim are very inspirational. And that's something actually good, like to do a video series about different. So yeah, I've seen some of it, mashallah, good quality, Allah Barak. Yeah, so those are some of the things Medina. But like I said, wherever you are, you got to surround yourself with good people, or else you're gonna lose yourself. I've seen people that they left Medina and then they left Islam. May Allah protect us from that. It's not one person, it's not two people. It's people that I personally sat with before, and they're no longer a Muslim. So that's why that dua that we heard today, Ya Muqallib al-Qulub, Thabbit Qalbi ala Dinik, is very important. O turn of the hearts, keep our heart firm on the deen. Because the qalb comes from the word, what's qalb mean in Arabic? It means heart, but linguistically the origin is something that flips. So the heart is something that flips. So either in good or in bad. So that's why we have to make dua.
You talked about earlier about the aligning us, first the books to align stuff with the Masjid. And the Masjid in turn took all the like a lot of classes that not make it align is true. So when you don't have no classes at all,
Yeah, that's a challenge, and that's where the community comes in and trying to. They should see with the committee, what are the actual challenges, and that's like some of the things that we're actually doing in New York City right now, analyzing what are the challenges that the committee is facing, and see how the community themselves could facilitate the solutions to those problems, or expedite the solution to those problems. So that's how you make a communal effort. And like we said, the Prophet ﷺ, he consulted his companions, although he could have said, I'm the decision maker and that's it, but he still consulted. But obviously the final decision was still in his hands. So there should be a support system, and sometimes people try hard, but sometimes it just doesn't happen. That's why we gotta all support each other in these things. And this and something that the Sheikh, he's an American Sheikh, he became Muslim in the 70s. He lives in Medina now. Basically, one of the good initiatives he said that we should be implementing is, like, especially the new Muslims, soon after they become Muslim, try to get people to sponsor them to go to Mecca, Medina, even for a month and a half, because that separates you from the bubble, gives you a chance to actually live with the Muslims and see things from a different perspective, and actually grow a lot faster. Because over here sometimes you might have too many distractions. So initiative like that would be really good for the.
Is there like a place there where like does stuff like that? Like if you connect to someone, send someone that's there, like an organization there that like houses.
There are some like official organizations now. It's still not fully matured, like the whole process, but there are like official ways you could actually do it legally. And I do recommend that you do things legally, especially something on this scale.
Yeah.
You could have like partnerships with some of these institutes, because they're for-profit institutes, so you could deal with it that way. Allahu a'lam.
That's a great idea. Even if some people who we talk about that.
Yeah, but it shouldn't be just Umrah. Umrah, obviously, alhamdulillah, we did like programs for youth and like youth from the UK. some of them weren't really praying, some of them were on drugs, some of them had girlfriend problems and boyfriend problems. They'd come, alhamdulillah, they go back fully changed. They come to you in a corner, they just need someone to open up to. They come to you and they say, you know, I really want to change. What do I do? I'm so deep into this, but you know, I'm facing this and this. So they need someone that's gonna hear them out and actually show them the solutions. And sometimes, like I said, they got to be taken out of the bubble in order to actually be open to change. To see that, you know, that situation isn't the ideal situation a Muslim should be in. So there should be, there's a lot of different programs that could be organized in Mecca, Medina, that could actually change things on a social level too. Wallahu a'lam. We'll discuss that.
Inshallah, we'll stay in touch and stuff.
جزاك الله خيرا. صلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد.
Thank you.